Chris Eubank Jr. has pulled out of his fight against Tommy Langford and also vacated the British middleweight title. The Langford fight was set to be his second defense. Now, Eubank is citing an elbow injury for his reason for pulling out of the fight, but he doesn't really give, in my opinion, any type of plausible explanation as to why he suddenly decided to abandon the British title altogether. If it was a genuine injury, and I'm not discounting the idea that it could be, why not just have the fight postponed? Here's my take on it, and it is only my opinion. It's certainly not a fact. It's just my opinion. I think that the real reason why the Eubanks are pulled out of this fight is not to do with an injury. I think it's to do with the beef that they have with Frank Warren and that Frank Warren has with them. There's no secret that the Eubanks and Frank Warren do not get along. There's a lot of bad blood there. And Frank Warren has been very vocal about his disdain for the Eubanks over the past few months. And I think the final nail in the coffin, or maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, however you want to word it, for the Eubanks, was the fact that Frank Warren was set to put a guy called Nathaniel Wilson on the same card as Eubank versus Langford. For those of you who don't know, Nathaniel Wilson is allegedly Chris Eubank Sr.'s estranged son. This is a guy who came out in the papers several months ago claiming to be the son of Chris Eubank Sr. And he says that Eubank Sr. abandoned him when he was a baby and hasn't been in his life at all for the 28 years that he's been on the earth. Now, I've watched a couple of Nathaniel Wilson's fights. He's only just turned professional. I think he's only had like three or four fights. And not being disrespectful, but to me, he doesn't look like a particularly good talent. So you have to look at him and say, well, why would Frank Warren sign that guy? The guy is already pushing 30. As far as I know, he hasn't got any type of serious amateur credentials. He doesn't seem particularly talented. Why would Frank Warren sign him? What's the angle? I think the angle could be, well, there's the backstory that he has, obviously, allegedly being Chris Eubank Sr.'s estranged son. And that can sell to a certain extent. It's as gimmicky as it is. But another motivation, I believe, for Frank Warren signing him, and again, this is just my opinion. I could be totally wrong. I don't know this for a fact. But my view is that another motivation for Frank Warren signing him and for putting him on that card was to get under Chris Eubank's skin. That's what I think it was. Frank Warren, one thing I do know about him, and anybody that's followed Frank Warren's career over the years, is that this man holds a grudge. This guy is very, very spiteful. If you cross Frank Warren in any way, he will try and get back at you in any way he can. This guy has sued a lot of people in the boxing industry and a lot of people in the press over the years. This is why the press in Britain used to call Frank Warren Frank the Writ, because he'd sued so many damn people. Yeah, he's a very, very fiery character. And he holds grudges, believe you me, Frank Warren. And if he can get at you any way, he will. If he can't get at you legally or any other type of way, he'll try and get at you through these very spiteful articles that he writes in his newspaper column. You watch when a fighter leaves Frank Warren, more often than not, he, will try and go after them immediately in his newspaper column and say all types of spiteful things about them. That's if he can't get them legally, because he normally tries to get them legally as well. And people who think that this is just normal behavior for a promoter, well, I can tell you for a fact that Eddie Hearn, at least publicly, has certainly not been involved in anywhere near as many legal disputes with fighters and just people in general as Frank Warren has over the past, 5 years that Eddie Hearn's been promoting. You look at the amount of disputes that Warren has been involved in the past 5 years, compare it to Hearn in terms of legal disputes, and it's not even close, people, in terms of disputes with fighters and all that type of stuff. It's not even close. Eddie Hearn is the kind of guy who will let things slide, and he's a bit more easy come, easy go than Frank Warren. Yeah. So, sorry to go off on a little tangent there about fish eyes, but because I've observed this of Frank Warren, not just over the past 5 years, I've observed this behavior in Frank Warren over the past 20 years plus. That's why I personally think, in my own personal unsubstantiated opinion, I think that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back right there. That Frank Warren, to try and get at the Eubanks, put Nathaniel Wilson on the show. At the end of the day, Frank Warren don't have the Eubanks signed to him. His guy's Langford. So he wanted Langford to beat Eubank. So he would obviously try and do whatever he can to get under the Eubanks skin. He might have even put Langford in the same dressing room as the Eubanks. You never know. He would have tried to do whatever he can to make sure that his man Langford would have had an advantage, whatever type of advantage, psychological, whatever. So that's my take on it. I think the injury is fake. Again, I can't prove it. That's just an opinion. And I think it's just an excuse to get out of the fight and not have to deal with Frank Warren anymore. That's what I believe it is. Where the Eubanks go from here, I really don't know. They seem to be burning bridges all over the damn place. Can they go back to Eddie Hearn? Seems unlikely. Will they try and wait it out until next year when Al Heyman is apparently going to set foot in the UK and launch PBC UK? Maybe they're going to wait for that. But given, and again, these are just rumors, I don't know this, but given the rumors about the kind of contracts that Al Heyman has people sign, I have my doubts about whether the Eubanks would want to sign with Al Heyman either. Because how many people have you ever heard of that have actually left Al Heyman? To be fair, it don't seem that many people want to leave Al Heyman, but how many people have you heard that have left him? I don't know of any fighters that have left him, unless they've retired. How easy or how difficult is it to sever ties with Al Heyman? The impression I get from the Eubanks, particularly senior, is that they want absolute independence. They're not interested in being tied down to long-term contracts with anybody. They're more interested, or certainly senior's more interested in building his own promotional company and doing his own independent deals with broadcasters. That's what he seems to be doing or trying to do. And I don't see how Al Heyman fits into that picture with his seemingly long-term contracts. And seemingly the type of power that he has over his fighters in terms of who they fight and when they fight and all that type of stuff. So I don't know where the Eubanks are going to go from here. A lot of you don't care. A lot of you feel like this is just comeuppance for the Eubanks. And that's fair enough. The Eubanks have said a lot of crass things. And even the fact that Chris Eubank Sr. allegedly has this son, Nathaniel Wilson, who he didn't claim as a baby. He said, apparently, allegedly, he fell out with the mother of Nathaniel Wilson early on, or they had a fling or something like that. It was in the papers anyway. You can go research that. And Eubank, I guess he said, that's not my son or something like that. I don't know. I can't quote it word for word, but as I say, go and have a look in the papers for yourselves online. You can find the articles and you'll see. So a lot of people are going to say this guy's also an absentee father, and that's another reason to dislike him. He abandoned this guy as a kid, and obviously I've got no time at all for people who deliberately abandon their children, whether it's a man or a woman. If you're abandoning your kids and you know that's your kid, then shame on you. Obviously, there are instances where kids grow up without their dad, for example, and it's not the dad's fault. Maybe the woman didn't tell the dad that it's their kid, or maybe the woman stopped the dad from seeing the kid, etc., etc. Those things happen as well, and that's equally despicable on the woman's behalf. But in instances where the man just takes off and runs to try and get away from his responsibility, that's despicable. And if, Eubank Sr. has done that, then again, it's just another reason for people to dislike him. But the thing about the Eubanks, and I think people are underestimating this, is they really do view no publicity You know, they really do go by the mantra, no publicity is bad publicity. That's how these people are. That's how Eubank Sr. ran his own professional career when he was fighting. For the majority of his career, he was hated in the United Kingdom. And he thrived off the hate. He courted the hate. He encouraged the hate. And that actually made him a lot of money and made him a star. And now he's trying to do it with his son, but take it to an even greater level, it seems. Some pantomime villain type stuff. Some wrestling heel business. That's what they're going for. And at the end of the day, as long as they're in the papers, as long as they're getting attention, as long as they're on the television news, then there's going to be somebody who wants to do business with them. It's just as simple as that. Even if he's burnt the bridges with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, there's going to be other people that do want to do business. And they've burnt bridges with Hearn, Warren, and with Mick Hennessy as well. But there will always be somebody. Maybe they'll do business with David Hay. Yeah? Trust me, as long as there's public attention on you, good or bad, somebody is going to want to do business with you because there's potential there to make money. It is what it is. Drop your comments in the comment section below, people. Maybe you completely disagree with me. Maybe you think this injury is genuine. I have heard Chris Eubank Jr. talk about having issues with his elbow before. But perhaps that's just a convenient chronic condition that he has to blame the, pull out of this fight on. Maybe he's always got a slightly dodgy elbow, but he goes ahead and fights with it anyway. In fact, last time that he mentioned his bad elbow, he went ahead and fought with it. With the bad elbow and said, oh, I had a bad elbow. That's why I wasn't really throwing jabs. But, whatever. Maybe this time he's just using it as an excuse and he was going to go ahead and fight with it anyway. But that's just my view, people. I think the injury is not the real reason they've pulled out of the fight. If you agree or disagree, drop it in the comment section below. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.